The cafeteria was always the loudest place in the entire school. It wasn't just the sound of hundreds of students eating and laughing, it was the chaos that came with the daily hierarchy of popularity. At the far tables sat the athletes, the cheerleaders, and the ones who thrived on attention. In the middle, the ordinary students tried to keep a low profile, hoping not to catch unwanted eyes. At the back, near the vending machines, sat the loners, the quiet ones, and the kids nobody ever really noticed. Among them was a girl named Emily, a thin, pale girl with dark brown hair that she kept tied in a messy ponytail, oversized sweater sleeves covering her hands, and eyes that rarely looked up from the floor. She wasn't invisible because she wanted to be. She was invisible because others made her feel like she didn't belong. Her father worked double shifts. Her mother had passed away years ago, and money was always tight. Emily never had the latest clothes, never carried an expensive phone, and never had the kind of confidence that came with being accepted. She brought her lunch from home every day, carefully packed leftovers or a simple sandwich her father had managed to prepare in the early hours before work. It wasn't much, but it was hers. And for Emily, who rarely had the luxury of enjoying something without ridicule, her lunch was her quiet moment of comfort. But that day, things didn't go the way they usually did. As she quietly unwrapped her sandwich, her eyes fixed on the table to avoid anyone's stare, a shadow fell over her. It was followed by the distinct sound of laughter, the kind that wasn't friendly, but mocking. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. The bullies. Mark, the tall, broad-shouldered boy from the football team, leaned against her table with a grin that made her stomach twist. Behind him stood two of his friends, Jason and Kyle, both snickering like hyenas waiting for scraps. Well, look who brought us lunch today," Mark said, snatching the sandwich from her trembling hands without hesitation. His voice carried across the cafeteria, drawing attention from nearby tables. Laughter bubbled up around them. Emily's heart pounded, her chest tightening with shame. "That's mine," Emily whispered softly, her voice barely audible over the chatter. But the bullies didn't care. Mark held the sandwich high as though it were a trophy. "Peanut butter and jelly. Wow, Emily. Living the gourmet life, huh?" His friends erupted in laughter. Jason grabbed her water bottle next and twisted the cap, pouring some of it onto the floor for effect. "Oops, guess you don't need this anymore." The students around them didn't interfere. Some laughed, others just looked away. To them, this was entertainment or something they'd seen too many times to bother stepping in. Nobody wanted to risk being the next target. Emily sat frozen, her hands clenched under the table, tears threatening to spill, but refusing to give them the satisfaction. She had learned long ago that begging or crying only made things worse. Still, inside, she burned with a mix of humiliation and anger. Why did it always have to be her? Why couldn't they just leave her alone? Mark tore into the sandwich dramatically, taking a big bite as though to prove his dominance. Thanks, Im. You're such a good provider." The cafeteria roared with laughter again, the sound echoing like thunder in her head. For a brief moment, Emily considered running out of the room. She thought about escaping, hiding in the bathroom until lunch was over, pretending none of it had happened. But something stopped her. It wasn't just the humiliation. It was something deeper. Something that had been buried for a long time. Emily's late mother had always told her one thing: never let them see you as weak. They can take your things, but they can't take your strength unless you give it to them. She had held on to those words in silence, but now, as Mark laughed with his mouth full of her sandwich, something inside Emily snapped. The cafeteria noise seemed to fade in her ears, replaced by the pounding of her heartbeat. Her eyes, usually downcast, slowly lifted and locked onto Mark's. For the first time, she didn't look away. The strange calm that washed over her made her movements deliberate. She pushed her chair back slowly, the screech of the legs against the floor drawing a few curious glances. Mark noticed her standing and his grin widened. "Oh, what's this? The mouse wants to squeak." Jason and Kyle snorted, preparing for more entertainment. But the look in Emily's eyes wasn't the look of a victim anymore. It was sharp, focused, almost dangerous. She stepped closer to the table, her body shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from something else. An energy she had buried for too long. Mark waved the sandwich in her face mockingly. "What are you gonna do, huh? Cry?" Emily didn't answer. She simply reached forward with lightning speed and grabbed his wrist, twisting it sharply. The sudden movement shocked everyone. Mark's face contorted with pain, the sandwich dropping from his hand onto the floor. The cafeteria went silent for a split second as they processed what had just happened. Jason moved forward, but Emily's other hand shot out, slamming the table with such force that the trays rattled. The sound echoed through the room, commanding attention. Every eye turned to them. The laughter died instantly. Emily's voice, clear and firm, broke the silence. "Don't ever touch my things again." The cafeteria froze. It wasn't just what she said. It was the way she said it. Her voice carried weight, authority, and a raw strength that none of them had ever heard from her before. Mark tried to shake free, but Emily's grip tightened. His knees bent slightly as he struggled, his face flushed red. Gasps rippled across the room. For the first time, the bully was the one being humiliated. Jason and Kyle hesitated, unsure whether to step in. The other students, who had always been spectators, were suddenly captivated. Something about the way Emily stood, her presence commanding the entire room, made it impossible to look away. And then, just like that, she released him. Mark stumbled back, clutching his wrist, his confidence shattered. The silence lingered, heavy and strange. No one laughed, no one cheered. They just watched, stunned into stillness. Emily didn't say another word. She picked up her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, and walked calmly toward the exit. The sound of her footsteps was the only thing that filled the cafeteria. It was as though the entire room was under a spell, paralyzed by what they had witnessed. When the door swung shut behind her, the silence remained. No one dared to break it. The same students who had laughed at her minutes ago now exchanged uneasy glances, realizing they had just seen something they couldn't forget. The girl they had dismissed, ignored, and ridiculed had shifted the balance in a single moment. And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt powerful. She hadn't planned it. She hadn't expected it. But something inside her had awakened, and the entire cafeteria had felt it. This was only the beginning.